This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace. You know when you're really stressed or not feeling so great about your life or about yourself? Talking to someone who understands can really help. But who is that person? How do you find them? Where do you even start? Talkspace. Talkspace makes it easy to get the support you need. With Talkspace, you can go online, answer a few questions about your preferences, and be matched with a therapist. And because you'll meet your therapist online, you don't have to take time off work or arrange childcare. You'll meet on your schedule, wherever you feel most at ease. If you're depressed, stressed, struggling with a relationship, or if you want some counseling for you and your partner, or just need a little extra one-on-one support, Talkspace is here for you. Plus, Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance? No problem. Now get $80 off of your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.
Welcome back live to Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. I have a little bit of time here between shows today, and I wanted to connect with the Spreaker community. I wanted to connect with everybody out here in the internet that's thinking about some big stuff. You know, I feel like a lot of times we can feel like we are alone. We can feel alone. We wonder if other people think like how we think. We wonder if things are really happening the way we think they're happening. Because, you know, you have all this negative press and this fallout and all these things that are going on. You know, the killing of innocent lions, issue of wildlife, people sport hunting, all those things that epitomize the most ruthless people on the planet and their mean ways. You know, I think a lot of times we judge where the world is going by this, and I just think that that's wrong. I think that when we see this negative type material, we realize that they're grandstanding for one person that's done something not so good. And it's time that we start realizing some cues, really, some symbolism, the reality of what I think is happening. I've been reading a lot of stuff about the awakening lately, and a spiritual awakening that's happening right here on planet Earth. And I know this is a little out of my normal conversation, but it is just as truthful with more answers, less questions as everything else I do. You know, and I think a lot of people right now are wondering about the awakening. Is it the time? Are people waking up? Are people getting the wake-up call? And I've done a show on the wake-up call before, but we're going to take this a little further. I think more and more people are getting the wake-up call, but better yet, more and more people are getting up out of bed and taking care of business. And the reason why I feel that way is for just a few clues that I've been seeing lately, and I want to talk with you about it. You know, the first thing is that when people are awakening, we do one thing that's interesting. We start to question who we are, right? We question all those things that we kind of put together as this representative, right? Like we have this representative, and you know what I'm talking about because I've walked into many places and talked to many people years ago as my representative. Because I didn't really want to delve. I didn't want to dig deep, and I wanted to kind of just deal with the way life was. But you know what? When you're awakening, you can't do that. And we begin to question who we are. And I've questioned who I am, and I've gone through changes, and I recently feel like I kind of went through a mini midlife crisis. And I'm very thankful for it. Because I was able to look at all the stuff that symbolizes me, able to see it, able to accept it, able to move past it, and able to let things go. Because, you know, honestly, people can define you as a lot of things, but it's only the definitions that you let stick become your reality. So, you know, the idea of questioning yourself begins with that spiritual awakening, and it's a big realization. A come to Jesus conversation, you might say. You know, questioning the very fiber of your being, questioning the way you were raised, questioning everything. And when you start to question everything and you piecemeal it together and you realize that there's some components of you that are absolutely amazing, some components of you, you could change. And some things that you've been carrying with you for a while that have nothing to do with you. Raise your hand right now. And if you're driving and listening to this, don't raise your hand. And if you're on the plane, you can still raise your hand, but people are going to wonder what you're raising your hand about. You can raise your hand at work if you want to. You can raise your hand at home. Raise your hand if you are questioning yourself right now. I have my hand raised. I have literally gone through the questioning process, re-question, spun out the BS, spun out the crap, got rid of that, threw that in the trash, recycled some of it, threw some of it away, and I feel a lot better. I feel somewhat effervescent. You know, the second clue that a spiritual awakening is happening, definitely that a spiritual awakening is happening within you. Because that's what's most important right now, right? And that is that we question why we're here. What is the reason why we're here? Why? Why are we here? What's our purpose? What's our life's purpose? And I think that's very interesting because I think we all have a different purpose, but I think it all kind of goes to the same area. You know, and it's about living out our purpose. And when we realize that we question ourselves and then we realize we have a purpose and then we realize the purpose and then we go, oh my God, I have a purpose. Oh my God, this is so great. I figured it out. And it can take a little while to get there. And there's nothing wrong with you. I believe it's all about timing. Because if you really are awakening, you realize that it's really all about timing. And there's no slow pokes. There's no, oh, I'm behind the 8 ball. No, quite the contrary, right? It's actually the right place at the right time with the right purpose, and you're able to actually carry it out now because everything is out of your way to begin to move forward. And think about what I just said because that's kind of deep. But it's the concept of you weren't ready to do what you needed to do until right now when you figured it out. So you're realizing what your life purpose is, and you got these big clues, and you got all this stuff you're working toward, and you might have a bunch of pieces that you're trying to figure out how to put together, but you know what? They're going to come together. You know it. Somewhere within that soul, within that heart, you know it. And you feel it. And you might not necessarily be able to put all your fingers on it. You might not be able to explain it to other people quite yet. And you might kind of feel like you should keep it like a little gift inside. Just for a little while until you really wrap your brain around it. Because you don't want people to think you sound stupid. But you know, we do judge ourselves a lot, don't we? We like to judge ourselves and put ourselves down. And sometimes we have to just let it go and realize that there's other people out there with a purpose too. And they might be able to help us. Or they might be part of it. So we question ourselves and we question why we're here. I think another clue, really, that you are in an awakening, that you are awakening from that long slumber, is that a lot of times our lives turn upside down for just a bit. It does. It turns upside down, and it's just the way it is. Because in order to get out of the system that you're in, that you're currently operating from, that's not purpose-driven, you have to make great changes. And as you're making these changes, see, we've been living this for so long that we're so used to this that it seems a little odd. I've been doing this my whole life. Why would I change? But not only on top of that, other things like the people around you might not understand you. Things might not seem to just fall into place. And better yet, I think that there's magic and there's karma and there's that kind of thing. But I think karma's a big deal too. If we've not been playing by the heart rules, there's some stuff we're going to have to deal with. And so even though you might have found your purpose and you go, oh my God, I know exactly what Ashley's saying. I figured out my purpose. However, even though you figured it out, there's a lot of karma that you might have to deal with. And that can feel a little topsy-turvy. That can feel like your life is kind of upside down. And it can also get you to the point where if the karma is kind of beating you down so much, you'll sit there and go, why am I trying to be good? Why am I trying to do this? Every time I move this direction, I get something bad come back. And that's when you definitely have to stay the course. Because it's always kind of really, really bad, right? Until it ends. And so you might have already been 3/4 through it. And it's time to see it through. I remember there was a quote, and I don't remember who said it, but it said, if you're in hell, keep on walking. Don't stop. Don't have a picnic. Don't sit there and have a keg and hang out there and have some beers. Keep walking. It's time to continue. Because you know what? You know that there's light. You know that there's light on the other side. And you know that you can get through it as long as you believe you can. And as long as you believe you can get through that topsy-turvy period of time where you're questioning why you're trying to do what's right. And once you get past that, you're going to feel a lot better about what you're trying to do and what you believe in. You know, the next clue that you are awakening is you begin to experience one of my favorite things. One of my absolute favorite things ever is synchronicity. Synchronicity means that you are right where you need to be, right when you need to be there, and gosh darn it, everything's going to work out great. Now, let me be frank with you, though. When I say everything's going to work out great, it might not necessarily work out the way that you think it's going to work out. And sometimes things can work out where we feel, kind of got duped on that. I thought that was going to happen. I thought that was, toward my purpose, and all that was going to come and flow all together. And you go, well, I thought I was on the path. Well, just wait, because things come back around. And it's interesting because when you do good by others, even when you don't even know that those others are even paying attention, it always comes back around. And you have to sit there and just let it go. But the synchronicity of it all are the clues that you're on your highest path. And I know a lot of people look at numerology and a lot of people look at coincidences and all that kind of stuff, but I think you have to look at the fact that when you go places and you show up and it's like the perfect timing and you meet with just the right people and you weren't planning it, that's when things are working. When things don't seem to be so tough anymore. I mean, sure, you might not get told yes all the time and you might have to keep going a different direction. But what I found out about that is that, you know what? When it's going that way, that means that you should be doing something else. I've recently started thinking about a process that I'm dealing with in my current life. And I kept going one direction, and I kept going one direction, and I kept going one direction. And that one direction, nobody was biting. Nobody was going that way. And so now I've changed course. And I've realized that the reason why that didn't work is because it wasn't supposed to work. It could not have worked. Had it worked, I would have gone off course. The next clue that I think is very interesting, I'm going to wrap up pretty soon because I want to do another show on this that's a little more intricate, a little more in-depth, and I would love to have a call-in show. And I would love for you to comment on this podcast and let me know if you think a call-in show would be good to do. Because I'd love to hear from you. And I think that I want to start doing it at least once a week here, outside of the Sunday through Sunday shows that I have on in California and Texas. And if you want more information about me, check out AshleyBurgess.com. Ashley, BERGES.com. AshleyBurgess.com. And you'll get more information about me. And that's got video and audio. And it's got about the 250 last shows on there. And it's got a lot of cool stuff on there. And you can get to know me as a person. And the reason why I know a lot of this stuff is because, I'm a therapist and I'm also a life coach and I'm a 3-time author and I make this my life. The whole concept of awakening and being able to carry forth purpose is my mantra. I mean, the most important thing to me is being able to walk out of this dimension with clear and proper awareness and clarity. And I think we all, to some degree, need to be focusing on that to realize the big picture. There's a huge picture out here. And a lot of times we get stuck looking at this little finite portrait. And the portrait's pretty. But there's a lot more to life. And there's a lot of things that you don't see. There's a lot of things that are just right there that if you actually pay attention. And sometimes you might have to stare. You might have to stare. You might have to look out into the sky and just stare. And realize that a lot of times we take things for granted that have the biggest unique voice, they mean the most, and they could take us to the next level. The next clue that you are awakening and leaving your past behind is that you'll tend to lose some people in your life that you don't need in your life. And the reason for that is you'll lose the need and the attachment to have them around because they no longer connect with you on a certain vibration. And you no longer connect with them because there's always some sort of issue. And I don't mean to be rude. It's not like you just leave them and go, hey, see you later, smell you later. No, it's more like you both kind of over time move separate. And sometimes you might actually have to do it yourself. And you might have to. And the only reason for that is when you try to be other people's crutches and they're not willing to see the awakening, they're only going to hold you down. And it's not because they want to hold you down. They're not over there thinking, oh, I'm going to hold Ashley down. No, they're held down. And you can't sit there and have a God complex. You can't sit there and have an ego complex that says that, oh, I can help everybody. Well, you're just now awakened. I mean, it's like me, it's like going to AA or going to rehab, being off cocaine for 3 weeks and going around town and telling everybody else how to get off drugs. That's probably not going to work. And people might not even listen. But the biggest deal is, I know that's an interesting example, but when was the last time you told somebody addicted to cocaine to just get off cocaine? And let me tell you why. No, unfortunately, most people have to learn the hard way, right? They have to go through the process, go through the addiction, probably hit somewhat rock bottom, right? Then get over it either on their own or through rehab and maybe a couple of batches of rehabs. And then eventually they come to their senses and they're probably middle-aged at that point, realizing that life has passed them by. And then they scramble to try to pick up the pieces of their life. It's the same about awakening. If other people aren't awakened, you can't wake them up for them. There's no use going to get a big pitcher of cold water and running in there and pouring it on your friend's head to awaken them, because you know what? It's just going to piss them off. And you're going to be trying to explain something that you already know. But the problem with that is that it's kind of fragile. As we awaken, it's a very new thing. It's like a new baby, right? And it's very fragile. And the last thing you want is somebody kind of like being difficult and asking you a lot of questions and making you feel bad. The last thing you want to do is feel bad about how you believe, right? That's the last thing you want. You don't want to, sit there and try to explain what's really going on and that person sit there and question every single thing. And I know that you listening out there have gone through this process where you've had something amazing, spiritual awakening happen to you, and you try to tell someone and they're like, oh, come on. And there you are, instead of explaining how beautiful it is, now you're trying to explain yourself. And you're trying to get your credit back, when in reality you're just kind of losing ground. And what you really got to do at that point is be like, hey, it's okay. I know it's a little deep. Let's go on and talk about something else. But I really think at that point in time, after you do that, you need to really think twice about hanging out with that person. Because they're not on the same wave. And people that aren't on the same wave cause tsunamis for other people in a bad, negative way. Because they get in the way of your growth. And the reason why you keep them around is for you're trying to help them, you're trying to do everything you can. But isn't that ego, huh? Isn't that really your ego? Saying, oh, I can help everybody. I'm the helper. Well, I know that I try to help people and I do everything I can, and I'm a therapist and I'm a life coach, but sometimes they still don't want any help. And I've looked people in the eye and say, I can no longer see you anymore, even though I could use the money. But I no longer can see you anymore because I am hitting my head against the wall because you are doing none of your personal work and expecting me to do everything, and you still come in here with the same issues because you know what? You like being miserable. You get something out of it. And understand this, please, if you take one thing from the show. If you have somebody in your life who's always unhappy and always miserable and always negative, you can tell them about it. You can help them. You can ask them, hey, for every negative thing, I want to hear 3 positive things. But eventually, you know what? For the most part, if they like where they are, they're going to stop talking to you. And I talk about that in my latest book, The 10-Day Challenge to Live Your True Life. And the 10-Day Challenge to live your true life, I talk about negativity and energy suckers. And when you are dealing with a full-on awakening, the last thing you need are people who mainline off negativity and sucking the everlasting energy out of you. Seriously. You've got to watch that, because that can bring you down. And I know sometimes you might feel like you're kind of like letting your friends down, but are you really? Or are you actually not letting yourself down? It's time to stop letting yourself down. It's time to say that, hey, I am worth it. I am a good person, and I am awakening to my truth. I am no longer going to be surrounded by negativity and energy suckers and people that are trying to play games with my mind and try to mentally play a game. I'm done. Game over. And they could even be very close friends to you, and they could be somewhat sweet, but just really negative, and you've got to let it go. You know, I want to stop with these two. Is that you begin, as a clue that you are awakening, you begin to get rid of clutter, and you begin to question a lot of the material possessions that we have. This is a big one. And I think this is like, if you look at a scale of 1 to 10, I think when you hit this mark, which I think is mark number 6 or 7, 5 or 6, this is where you are that much closer to 10. And I think that tells you exactly that you are on your way to greatness. Because when we start realizing that we have a lot of clutter and that our material wealth doesn't define us, but in reality, what does it do? It holds us down. Oh gosh, that's when we get it. I mean, I've just recently started getting it, so don't think that I'm like the bearer of all this information and knew this when I was 5 years old, but I knew a lot of it subconsciously and consciously. But the material thing, I've always kind of felt that way. Because I always felt weird about ever having anything. I was always, I was brought up in a church situation where there's a lot of guilt. But I realized that the guilt is really kind of a Band-Aid. When in reality, you shouldn't feel guilty. You just don't need it. You don't need it. If you have enough to have shelter and a decent home that you're happy with, that you're comfortable in, that's great. A car that gets you from A to B that's comfortable when you're having to drive long distances, that's great. But anything more that makes us held down, that makes us where we are bound to our material possessions, is when we have the problem. And that's when life is no longer being lived out of joy. Instead, it's lived out of necessity, and we work to pay the money to have the things that hold us down. And I want to stop here because I want to do another show on this in the next few days. And I want to cover all these signs and more to know that you are awakened. Because as you awaken, you need to know that this is normal. You're in an elite group. And this elite group is getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's getting stronger and it's getting faster. And it's getting more brilliant and more bright and more effervescent. And you are a part of an amazing movement. And as you realize that you're such an integral part of this amazing movement, you are important. You are necessary. And the more you realize that, the more you can be of help and service on your purpose. The last thing I want to cover before I go to break and head back into the other studio to do a show is that you begin to realize fully that love is the only thing. That we're here to love. That we're here to love. That we're here to be with people. That we're here to love and respect people. And that when you look around and you see your spouse or you see your kids, and you no longer just see them as whatever, but you realize you love them through and through. And there's more music and there's more stuff being written about this every day about being true. And I think you start realizing that yes, we have freedom of choice, but we start realizing that we really want to better our current relationship. So instead of going out and having sex with people and doing all this and doing all that, you sit there and you look at the person you have a relationship with and you want to better that relationship because it actually means something to you. Because it's more than the sex. It's more than anything else. It's the love. And you start also realizing that the only thing that matters in this world is love. And everything else is fear-based. And I don't like coming from the position of fear because I'm never very effective that way. None of us are very effective coming from fear. Fear takes away all our power. It makes us powerless. So think about this. You are an awakening individual. You have amazing things happening. You see it on a daily basis. You're getting rid of that material clutter, or you're beginning to analyze that. You know, maybe some people are going out of your life that you don't need, that are holding you back, vice versa, and there's some meaningful relationships coming in. And I'm appreciative that you've turned on my podcast, and I look forward to getting your information as far as what you think about this, the more of the direction you want to hear, and also what you think about a call-in show. And remember, the synchronicities are not just coincidence. This means that you are on the true path, your true calling. And things might be upside down a little bit, but realize that there's always a correction before you go in to the right direction. And remember, when you question yourself and you question why we're here, that's a good thing. I look forward to hearing from you. You know, on Perspectives with Ashley Burgess, there's always more answers and less questions, because I think that's what's real. It's about truth. It's not about fear. It's about providing truth and shedding light and helping other people be successful and awesome human beings. Stay tuned. I will have another show for you shortly. And Perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back. And I'll be back this time in 3 shakes.